So right off the bat, I'm going to call the Board of Health together and then recess. All right, right off the bat. That's what you have right here, and then we'll deal with it. We'll be dealing with it later this morning. I'm just going to leave it at that till we decide.
Yeah, and when we get done the Board of Health, what I'd suggest is that we recess it, and then we recess it to the end of the budget, because that way you can reopen it if you want. So,
I am going to go through this opening of the Board of Health, which we have to legally do by 9:30, recess it. Instead of going into my spiel and yours and then John or Kathy's presentation, I'm going to go to deputations first. They don't need to sit through all that. It could be get the deputations up and down. For sure. Yeah, and he's agreed to that. At the Board of Health, they want to do it first right off the bat. Well, council will decide that. But normally we were going to do it under the Health and Social Services section, but we just got to get it over. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to, on behalf of council, welcome everybody here this morning. I see most of council has their coffee and their pencils sharpened and their thinking caps on, and that's a good thing. Just some procedural stuff here before we begin our 2017 budget deliberations. First off, I'd like to begin this morning by thanking our camera volunteer, Judy Ann McCauley, is working the cameras for us, and we very much appreciate her efforts in looking after the publishing and broadcasting of our meetings. Again, if you do have a cell phone with you, if you could make sure that it's not going to make a disruptive noise, that would be greatly appreciated. And of course, again, a reminder to everyone that our meetings are televised and they are web streamed. I'm sure we have a couple of long days ahead of us before we get into the budget. Just a reminder, including myself, to try to keep our comments concise as possible. Little change in procedure this year. This year we will be addressing the public health budget during our regular budget deliberations. In order to facilitate this, we will be calling the Board of Health to order and then recessing it until the time that we'll be dealing with it later. Some changes in our procedures, Mr. Clerk, on the Board of Health. Andy has let me know that we are required to call the Board of Health to order prior to 9:30 a.m. So it would seem to me like a good opportunity right now to call the Board of Health to order, so I will do that. Stay with me. I now will call the Board of Health to order. And I will recess this council meeting to move into the Board of Health, and I will ask first to the Board of Health members, are there any matters of pecuniary interest respecting the Board of Health agenda? And I assume you have the Board of Health agenda nearby. Is there any pecuniary interest to declare? Seeing none, I will now recess the Board of Health until such a time as we reach a time that we'll agree on later to deal with the Board of Health agenda. You're okay with that? We handle that okay? We've done everything legally, Mr. Clerk? Thank you. Okay, we're now moving back into council. And I would like to, at this time, get a consensus upon the level of formality we will use in our meetings in the next few days. Normally at a council meeting, we are expected by procedure to stand to speak. I think everyone agrees that we will waive that. Can I have a show of hands that we'll stay seated? Thank you very much. You do not have to stand during speaking. Normally also at council meetings, we need a mover and a seconder, and I would suggest by a show of hands that we, as we go through the budget, only have a mover, no seconder, and that we proceed in that fashion, knowing full well that at the end of the budget session, whenever that is, tomorrow, Friday, or whenever, we will always have a last chance to go back and revisit any of those. Can I have a show of hands that would support that procedure, that just a mover to put it on the floor? That too will happen. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm back on this agenda, which is council. I will ask first if there is disclosure of pecuniary interest, and if so, declare the nature thereof. Hearing none, I would now suggest, rather than going into my opening remarks and the county managers and any other member of council, and then on to Mr. Ford and Kathy's report, I would suggest that we do that after we go through our 3 deputations, if that's okay with council. I would suggest that rather than keep these folks waiting, and they certainly can stay as long as they like, but I would suggest we hear the deputations first and then move on. Okay? Our first deputation this morning is from Mr. Ron Sadler, and he is going to come forward and speak to us about concerns on property tax increases. And Mr. Sadler, good morning, and there's a little talk button there you can push, and our procedure on deputations, as you know, is 10 minutes, and I would certainly let you know at the 9-minute mark that you have a minute left.
Well, I hope to be shorter than that I can field some questions from you. Mayor, Council, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Basically, my commentary as a whole is an indication that, again, a statement of what's obvious, but in more detail, we don't live in a fishbowl. We're part of a bigger whole. And I'd like to read some excerpts of this particular document I provided for home reading. It will give you a little more detail and the crises ahead for this budget. We're talking a 5% increase. That's with the other headwinds that we have facing us, I believe, steep, considering history. And again, much of this you cannot control. It's simply a case of, unfortunately, we all are on the receiving end of this. Property taxes are a significant cost to the residents of this county, in particular for businesses which pay over 3 times the equivalent residential valuation. The problem is that property taxes are only one of many taxes, policy decisions, and events that are crushing taxpayers and forcing hard decisions. Many families with 2 adults cannot meet their current obligations without having several jobs. To pay all the costs related to shelter and food, let alone pay the increasing cost of living coming at us from every direction. Life for the increasing number of single-parent families is extreme. To understand the scope of the financial pressure, I provided excerpts from the paper Canada's Financial Viability and Crisis. On January 9th, 2017, the pro-liberal Toronto Star published an article titled Finance Canada Puts Forth Bleak Fiscal Forecast. Maybe you already felt that our economy was on a downturn, but the report depicts Canada's public finances as a ruinous train wreck. The forecast turns upside down the premise on which public policy has been based, that Canada is in better fiscal shape than most major economies. The report also stated that deficit financing of Canada is facing, for many years, could be brought under control with annual cuts in government expenses. Jim Stanford, has stated the employment rate is a more important statistic than the unemployment rate, which counts only for those actively looking for work. His study found the 2016 employment rate is still below 2008, which means Canada has fewer jobs when factoring the population, which has grown by 1.75 million. Canada ranks 20th out of 34 OECD countries, and even an insolvency-threatened Italy is ahead of Canada in job creation. Of smaller urban centres, 21 out of 46 are still below the 2008 employment levels, without adjusting for population growth. The concern is amplified by the losses of mostly full-time jobs in Canada's good-producing sector. Note the population has grown by 1.3 million, or 2.5 times the labor force. Employment is not only falling behind population growth, but the statistic does not consider income, indicating, again, 500,000 new jobs. If you are counted, and this is what has been a change in Stats Canada, you are counted as employed if you did any work, even if you were not paid for the job. Projecting the annual Liberal immigration levels of 300,000 to 400,000 per year redirects the financial resources away from domestic issues needing attention. These levels strain existing community services already in distress, such as healthcare, affordable housing, and transit systems. Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, where the cost of living is the highest, will be the destination of 70% of the immigrants. The Toronto corridor population will grow by 250,000 per year. Most of these immigrants require substantial long-term investment in services, in particular language education, which has very limited availability and success for adults to function in society without interpreters and to enter the job market. In Metro Vancouver, for example, 65 schools list almost 60% of the students as English language learners. We can't even communicate with these people. Half of government-sponsored immigrants have not had any employment for 3 years or more after arrival. And the kicker here is the provincial and municipal governments are faced with long-term downloading of the federal government in a large percentage of this population. But here's the fact that we only have one taxpayer. It's coming out of one pocket. The moral ethic, and this has been a long-term coming here, the moral ethic that built a strong and diverse and vibrant economy has been depreciated by successful governments controlled by the entitled. They saw the opportunity of international trade using currency exchange to provide the populace with cheap goods, essentially buying votes by exporting manufacturing jobs to Asia and Mexico. Competitive industries which flourished for generations, supported by highly skilled staff, producing quality products from textiles to shoes to furniture, to name only a few, were essentially wiped out in less than 30 years, with heavy losses from 1989 from the government policy of Brian Mulroney and Bob Rae. Our society is not divided in the sense of race or age, but by entitlement. Those on public payroll who make up the civil class of the entitled, or as they call it, the new upper class, control society through institutions and unions. There are 1.3 million municipal, provincial, and federal staff in Ontario alone. The institutions of government services, and in particular education, have morphed under restrictive legislation into self-promoting and self-preserving, surging their wages to the highest in the world, while lowering performance and fighting accountability. The new upper class has dramatically altered and undermined our social morality. Their dogma was graphically stated by a teacher I was speaking with in June. I stated that the answer to our declining wealth was economic nationalism, protecting Canadian businesses to level the playing field, to retain and build the Canadian labor force. His reply, "You mean made in Canada products? That means I would pay more for my purchases." I stated that prices would mean somewhat higher, but your neighbor would have a job. He replied, "I don't care if he loses his house. I'm not willing to pay more." I asked, "What about your son getting a job?" he's going into insurance. The Ontario Association of Food Banks is reporting a sharp rise in new clients due to sharply increasing costs in all aspects of living, from food to hydro. In 2015, Hydro One, one of many hydro commissions, cut the power to over 80,000 customers. This number is expected to jump significantly in 2016. The elderly receive a significant portion of their incomes from private sector pension plans, which are invested in corporations. Therefore, taxes levied against corporations and higher operating costs represent a clawback of senior income. Also, this drop in income has forced 30% of those who had retired to go back to work to support their families to keep their homes. The social decay from the lack of government, businesses, important initiatives is very evident in smaller communities with retail and manufacturing disappearing, lost jobs, vacant buildings. I live in Norfolk County, where empty industrial buildings are testimony to the thousands of jobs lost. Over one half of those employed and living here now drive out of the county daily for work, many spending $10,000 annually on vehicle costs. Less than 60% of the employable population in this county is working. Canadians are borrowing at record levels to maintain a lifestyle against an unrelenting rise of the cost of everything. Canadians are forced to accept multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet as the number of full-time jobs continue to fall. According to Oxfam, 33 of the wealthiest in Canada are worth 112 billion, which is equivalent to the wealth of the bottom 40% of the population. 40%. But that's only about 1/3 of the Ontario government debt that we're having to carry. The damage across the entire private sector of the economy is manifest the massive growth of debt against a flat growth of income and near zero return on save for tomorrow investments. Rock bottom interest rates are at the heart of why we have seen a relentless rise in debt to income, said Douglas Porter, chief economist at Bank of Montreal. It is by far and away the primary driver. For the first time in history, Canada's household debt is larger than the gross domestic product, almost $2 trillion. Although as expected, this debt is mostly in mortgages, the alarming changes in the growth of other debt sources to 1/3 of all debt. These other sources include credit cards, bank loans, private loans, lines of credit, car loans. The Bank of Canada, along with the International Monetary Fund, has warned that the growth in consumer debt is unsustainable. Governments have incorrectly accepted house prices as a single indicator of taxpayer wealth. The property value reassessments are accepted as a justification for increase in spending. In Toronto, house prices have doubled since 2004. Ignoring the fact that households owe at least 3.5 times their disposable income, it has doubled since 2008, and closing in on 1 million households are carrying that level of debt. Savings have evaporated, and a Manulife survey found that 1/3 of households have less than $1,000 available for emergencies.
Mr. Sadler, I am going to inform you have 1 minute left, sir. Thank you.
Okay. The crisis is reached an institutional level. According to the Bloomberg News from January 12th, the major Canadian banks are in talks with the federal government. They're asking for financial bailout of the shortfall from anticipated large number of mortgage defaults as the economy weakens and the housing market corrects. Most of the government pension funds have already pulled a majority of fund investment out of Canada. The Ontario Teachers' Pension has opened investment offices in England and Hong Kong. The Canada Pension Plan now only invests $1 of every 5 of our payroll contributions in Canada. The other $4 leave to invest in other countries. The Federal Finance Department has released a report saying that a large federal deficit financing will go on for many years. The economy will tolerate a national debt exceeding $1 trillion. It is argued from substantial growth and job creation. Later, the report states that the deficits will balloon due to the major economic challenge caused by the ongoing retirement of baby boomers. This demographic shift will significantly shrink the workforce participation and road productivity. This is what you're faced with. Accepting the labor force shrinkage, and more accurate, the federal government is now raising employee deductions and reducing available tax deductions. They're reducing transfer payments to the provinces, and is considering planning other sources of income, carbon tariffs on imported goods, and carbon food taxes, which they anticipate may begin this year, on dairy, pork, and beef. An initial phase-in of a 35% tax on food.
Okay, Mr. Sadler.
So that
I'll
gives
have
you
to-
some indication. The balance is for reading.
Yes, and thank you very much, and I'm certainly going to open it up for questions from members of council. Councillor Black, I'll start with you.
Well, first of all, it's quite a list that you have here, and probably most people are aware of this, and I look at it from the point of view that you've presented us a list of symptoms of an affluent society. So, the demands of our society are always going up, 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 and we're never presented with any solutions. Like for anyone to ask anybody around this table or any one of these employees, what is the solution to this dilemma? So, Keith Richardson, I remember when I first got on council, the regional chairman, I complained to him about pretty well, the same sort of things. And he'd always throw it back at me and say, well, what do you want us to cut? What programs do you want us to cut? So I guess maybe I'll throw it back at you and say, well, do you have a solution for us? How do you see us making
I see the budget
reducing
process as an ongoing process. And as a result, what you have and will pass is a tentative budget. Beyond that, I suggest putting together a committee of councillors or staff and also the public to analyze every operating element. To get an idea how bad things are, Trudeau held a town hall meeting in London a couple weeks ago. And a lady got up and she was crying. She says, I have $65 left at the end of the month. And he goes, there. You didn't hear the rest. Don't worry, I'm going to take that $65 from you. You're going to have nothing. Okay? But the reason why is we have a massive transfer of wealth to government, a massive transfer to government employees, their wages, too many employees. We don't need 1.3 million government employees in the province of Ontario to operate the province of Ontario. That's it in a nutshell. You've exploded your population, whereas if you look at the statistics for what's happening in manufacturing, we're compressed. We're going the other way. You're not flowing the same direction as the economy. And you're operating separate. And you're operating based on a standard of living that's created not by the generation of wealth in this province, but by debt. We're burying ourselves in debt to live well and screw the next generation. Somewhere it's got to give. And unlike Greece, we don't have an EU to bail us out. We hit the wall.
Anything further, Councillor Black? Thank you. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Through you to Mr. Sadler. As a taxpayer of Norfolk County, do you feel you receive good value for your taxes?
Well, of course not. I wouldn't be here otherwise.
What are some things you think we could correct?
Well, really simple. Okay, let's take a look at this past summer. I was in the front yard there, and here's a hydrant opened up to the guys that got water pouring out. There's two guys standing there. Do you really need two guys to stand and watch water run out onto the lawn? Hardly. How many jobs have come to this county from economic development? There's a lot of places that it can be cut. You're living on the fat of the land, but the land ain't fat. I have a customer base across Ontario that's shrinking. I have a supplier base that's shrinking. People going out of business. We have a shedding of jobs. On my customer side, we've got a lot of amalgamations. Typical amalgamation, at least 5, 6 people. And these are small engineering firms. 5 or 6 people lose their job. Every amalgamation takes place. Where on the supplier side, people are giving up. And they say, I'm just shutting down. I'm done. And without business, especially with your tax rate against business versus residential, you're in serious financial trouble being able to raise money. So, yeah, I look at my little building and what I pay in taxes. Holy cripe. And you look at that across the county. And $81 million operating, wow. For the population, that's incredible. Now, thank you very much that we're not like Toronto that owes 9 or close to 10 billion at this point. But again, look at the numbers and look at where we're going. And look at what we got to attract. And you don't attract business by scaring it off. I am being chased now by Buffalo Niagara Development, who has said in their last email, we have helped 84 Ontario companies relocate to that Buffalo Niagara development area. As you read through this document, you read about another company, and that's part of a group out of Scarborough looking at relocating, where 3 years ago their hydro rate was $500,000 they paid for hydro. Now it's over $1 million for hydro. Sorry, we're not competitive anymore. We're gone. We're looking at Illinois. Buffalo and Niagara is not the only area companies are moving to.
Anything
And we
else,
can't
Councillor
afford the
Height?
job loss.
No,
Sorry.
that's great, Mr. Mayor. I have one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
In your report here, you mentioned that taxpayers are making tough decisions in their households, and I hear the same thing. So are you here today suggesting that this council needs to also make some tough decisions?
Absolutely. You need to set the bar. You haven't followed the city of Windsor, which hasn't raised taxes in 7 years. And they are still operating. They're not bankrupt. They're not Detroit. I'm suggesting there's a starting point, and you should take advantage of the situation now. And also recognize this is going to go on for a long time. We are not having a provincial election till 2018, federal election to 2019. We can't get rid of these people. We can only put pressure on them to change. And by you people acting with constraint, you're going to put pressure on them. And you're going to help the businesses that are making the hard choice, which is going to cost you, again, taxpayer dollars, to stay. I'm not going to leave. I'll fight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I kind of wish that Kathleen Wynne was here to listen to your speech. Do you have any, you put a lot of effort into the work you presented, and I just wonder, with respect to, there's talk about dissolving the Canada, U.S., Mexico Free Trade Agreement. Do you have any ideas of how that would affect our economy?
Well, I have great hope for the new president. He is already, in fact, before he reached the inauguration, he's helped this country. In June of 2016, the president of Ford Motor Company made an announcement, I'm closing Oakville. We're pulling out of Ontario. We're also closing several plants in the U.S., and we're building a $2 billion facility in Mexico. Trump won the election. From there, Ford made an announcement, our plans are under reconsideration. And 2 weeks ago, the president of Ford Motor Company was on the news, and he said, we are pleased to announce we have made the decision to invest in Michigan and retain our plants here, and the plans to go to Mexico are off the table. So, yes, there is a potential of help coming from the U.S. The biggest issue that's going to face all of us is the Ontario Action Plan for Climate Change. If you read that document, it will scare the crap out of you. These people were definitely smoking something when they wrote that. I quote a number of sections in this document from there. They are looking at providing what they call incentives, but in fact are tax penalties to change, as they indicated, our behavior, the way we live, the way we move, the way we work. And they will keep penalizing us until we do so. And do what? Buy electric furnaces and electric cars. They are offering a subsidy, you'll read in there, of $14,000 if you buy an electric Toyota, Tesla, whatever, if your income is below a certain level. So you're low income, you're living check to check, and you're going to buy a $60,000 vehicle with a $14,000 subsidy? Not likely. It's a big scam because they lost a pension plan and they promised Toronto mass transit. So we're all going to pay for Toronto mass transit through our natural gas consumption and through our fuel consumption. It's a maneuver from there because that little ditty goes in there and say, wow, $14,000, that's really great. Nobody's going to take advantage of it. You can't.
Anything further, Councillor Columbus? You're okay. Councillor Sonnenberg, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the presenter, much of your presentation had to do with unemployment and no jobs to be had. I'm going to differ with you. Last night we had a farmer here talking about bunkhouses for offshore labor. How many thousands of offshore workers do we bring into Norfolk County every year? Was it 25,000, did he say?
I believe it's just over 5,000.
5,000?
Councillor Sonnenberg.
Whatever. Canadians will not work in the field. If they did, there would be no unemployment. You can make good money working in the field from May till November. I spent most of my life picking tomatoes and cucumbers and throwing bales of hay. If it's good enough for me, it's good enough for the rest of the people that live here. Drive up and down the streets and the highways of Norfolk and Haldimand, and you will see on fast food places, help needed, hiring now, bring resumes. Jobs are going begging. Toyotetsu, a new, modern, clean, state-of-the-art facility cannot keep people employed. They start out at $15 an hour. They give their job rates right out on the sign. They start at $15 an hour. Within a few months, you're making $18, and before long, you're making over $20. They can't keep people in the plant. They don't want to work. So I'm sorry I don't share your same concerns.
Oh,
about the
no,
unemployment.
we're absolutely right on the same page. We're completely on the same page. This document I wrote is part of a much larger document, a 30-page document, regarding succession and the transfer of essentially carrying our economy from people with gray hair to the next generation. And we are not looking at that at all. But we are, and as I was talking about my customer base just giving up, my supplier base just giving up, yes, because we are not really investing in, and the government's not really looking at the next generation. If you're 30 years of age or younger, odds are 50-50 you're still living at home. That's wrong. And we haven't addressed those issues. And we have to address those issues. So, yeah, this is kind of a shotgun of what's going on in our society, but it's what we're all facing. The federal government has realized this. This has just came out, this finance report in December, in saying, and their response to that, which to me is completely wrong, instead of looking at training and forcing people to consider their future, raise taxes, cut transfer payments. That's the federal government response. And I'm saying this is really, really wrong, the way we're looking at this, because you can't get out of it that way. You can't solve it that way. When our generation, which I'm a part of, the baby boomers, is reached the point we can't work anymore, this whole country is screwed. We're in really, really bad shape.
Anything further, Councillor Sonnenberg? No, any other questions from committee members?
As I say, it's a
Council
long-term
members?
event, what's happening here.
Okay, well, Mr. Sadler, you've put a lot of work into this, and obviously you've done a lot of research. We appreciate your deputation this morning. I would like a motion to receive. Councillor Oliver has moved that we receive Mr. Sadler's deputation. Discussion? Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, Ron.
Just one point. Beyond that, the larger document that's being developed is going to the provincial and federal governments, and I will continue to work with them to try and turn the scenario which we're headed into, which is a horrific mess at this point. We don't have people who want to work. Absolutely. Thank you very much
Ron.
for your time.
You have a good day. Thank you very much. Our next deputation is from Heather King. She is the CEO of our Norfolk County Public Library System, and she's here to talk about the 2017 library budget. Good morning, Heather. Welcome, and I'll turn things over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Luke, County Council, and senior staff. I have prepared a couple of items for you to have a look at, which I'm going to be referring to, so if you wanted to pull those in front of you now, that would be great. NCPL is growing. Our strategic plan that was shared with you in the fall of 2016 is entitled Framework for Growth. The Delhi Branch Fundraising Committee has so far raised $80,000 and will grow their efforts to meet the $200,000 target. The 2017 operational budget request is less than the 2016 request, but does have a request to help us grow our technology services that we can offer to residents of Norfolk. The Library Board believes that this budget support will offer a high return upon the investment. So right now I'd like you to quickly look at this first page, which is entitled Areas of Growth at the Norfolk County Public Library. So over the past 3 years, we've taken a look at some of our statistics that we count daily and then put together the items annually. And you'll see that over those 3 years, there's been significant growth in quite a few areas. We're really happy to see that people are still reading, both books that they can take out in person and also books that they can download electronically. We're also loaning many books to other people around the province, and we're also getting loans back to us. And especially our programming is definitely increasing and encouraging more people to come to the library. And much of that programming is based upon technology. If you flip that page over, you can see some of the accomplishments that the Norfolk County Public Library Board achieved in the past year. And we would like to thank Mayor Luke, Councillor Black, and Councillor Wells for being representatives on that board. Some of the things that we've done, or taking down some of the barriers that we had in place before that kind of limited the amount of borrowing that could happen to our residents. And then I'd like you to focus upon this next page, which is kind of a breakdown about our budget requests this year and what the major drivers are that we are experiencing. So as always, salaries and benefits are about 80% of our budget cost, and you'll see that we are proposing an 8% increase. However, some of that is just based upon the 2% increase that our staff will receive, as well as those who are going to be climbing the grid. You'll also see there's a grant that's been received for students, and that will be 100% cost recovery with supporting money. And the big item that we are requesting is a new position called Technology and Social Media Assistant. The good note about this is our IS department is in total support of this program, and are going to be reducing their transfer payment requested of us by $60,000. So the real cost of this position in this budget is $21,900. The other services listed there, contracted services and minor capital, are again projects that some of us we really can't do without, but they do have a significant impact upon our budget. At this time, I'd like to go through the notes that I prepared about the benefits of hiring a technology and social media assistant. So they're on the bottom of that page, and they continue on the other page. So first of all, the Norfolk IS division has a priority to serve Norfolk staff. As the library grows, the need for public access technology also grows. The IS division does not have a mandate or time to implement and train staff on the new technology that the library is purchasing. Items such as Mac computers, 3D printers, Cricut and vinyl cutters, and robotic items. Public access computers are in demand. The Norfolk IS division does not have sufficient time to upgrade or ensure these machines are operating at 100% capacity. NCPL staff need to keep pace with digital devices so that they can answer questions that library patrons often pose. The new position will take the lead on staff and volunteer training, which will ultimately assist us to meet a strategic direction, which is to provide exceptional customer service. There is a high need to offer lessons and workshops that will help certain populations increase their digital literacy. Seniors and the unemployed are two groups of people that are frequently asking library staff for assistance. And last year, we calculated the number of questions that were coming to our staff about technology, and they estimated around 8,000 questions. A staff dedicated to offering technology lessons for the public would serve an express need and support our strategic direction of providing inclusive opportunities for literacy. Grants that have provided student hours for technology teaching are changing their mandates to focus upon technology research. Grants cannot be relied upon. Our need in Norfolk is on teaching technology, not on doing the research. A dedicated position could help NCPL deliver a broader reach of service to groups such as homeschoolers and nonprofit organizations who are interested in makerspace equipment and their possible uses. Social media avenues are gaining popularity when promoting events and activities for nonprofits. A position that can help develop policy to guide use, create messages for social media tools, and support our management team with ideas will increase our reach to residents who may not currently use the library. Overall, this position will fill a huge need and help the library further its mission and new slogan, NCPL, more than books. So I'm open to any questions that you have about these budget items or anything else that you have been presented with.
Thank you very much, Heather, for that presentation. Councillor Sonnenberg first, please.
Mr. Mayor, Heather, there's a term here I'm not familiar with. Makerspace. What is that?
Makerspace is a place where people can come and be creative, and the library has taken on a technology kind of focus. So we do have 3D printers in our lab. We have 2 currently. So this would allow, for example, a farmer to come and produce a part that they might think they need to create for one of their farm implements as kind of a test trial. It also allows people to just kind of have an idea to solve a problem and be able to create it in a plastic format before it would go on to a company that would produce it in steel or iron or whatever they want to do. Makerspaces also have a really creative component for everyone. We have a green screen, we have a camera, we have a Mac computer that will allow people to digitize photos, make their own movies, make YouTube videos, all that kind of thing. So that in the business world, it would help them market their new idea to others.
Councillor Wells, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, before I make a comment, I'd just like to congratulate Heather on the wonderful job that she's doing leading the library. She's a real asset, just noted about that.
Thank you.
And the only negative thing I can think about it is, Heather, as good as you are, you always ask for more money. And I always have problems with that, as you are well aware. And I look at your proposed operating budget, and you're asking for a proposed increase of 4.3%.
Yes.
I guess my question to you is, and to be as fair as possible, if we do not agree to the 4.3%, what would you have to cut? Would you cut, for instance, the full-time position? Would that be what you would look at?
I would prefer not to cut that position. We would, as a library board, probably look at other items in our budget.
Because you certainly understand 4% is a pretty hefty increase.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I echo Councillor Wells, Heather, and thank you for your hard work and for your good presentation that you always bring to us. But you've confused me a little bit, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I know this will sound like it. The handout that you've just given us regarding the new position, you show a dollar figure there of 82,000, but then your bracketed information says the amount needed to fund it is 21.9. So I've got that number in my head this morning, and yet our budget summary document for this same position identifies a 2017 net levy impact for this position of $75,200. So I'm assuming this is the correct number, and I understand what you're trying to present to us in the sense that it's not a charge that IS is going to make to you, but are you assuming that IS is going to reduce their budget by $61,000?
That is the agreement that we have if this position is funded.
That their budget will be reduced by $61,200 real dollars?
They will not charge the library.
Well, that's not the same as what I just said, though.
Right.
Okay.
So the interdepartmental charge that the library currently receives from IS is about $80,000.
Yes.
So they would reduce that charge by $60,100.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm still puzzled then, I guess, and we'll have to wait until we get to that part of our debate, because this is what I find myself relying on when I'm assessing the impact of this request on the county.
Okay.
Is the levy impact of $75,000. Thank you for your explanation.
Thank you, Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mayor Luke, and thank you, Heather, for your presentation. Similar to Councillor Oliver, is with that amount of money, and if I understood it right, are IS going to lay off somebody? That's a lot of money.
No.
I mean, interdepartment transfers don't mean nothing, and as far as I'm concerned, if the dollar value is still there. Doesn't matter what department it's in, it's all money.
Right. IS would have that time available for their staff to be able to help Norfolk County with their technology needs, where currently they're charging the library board for technology needs that we have. And they're telling us that because we're expanding into more technology for the public to use, that's really not part of their mandate.
I understand that, but again, there really isn't a savings there. There is no savings.
Not for the county, it's a savings for the library board, because we won't be charged that amount as a journal entry.
No, but as your budget goes up, the other one stays the same. We're no further ahead, bottom line. Anyways, I'll leave it at that for now. My next question is, the other day I happened to go in the SCS library, and I was quite impressed with the library they have at the high school. And my question to you is, do you liaison with the school libraries? How do you work with them, like with your books or programs in any way?
We don't share books. because we're on a totally different circulation kind of system, except at Lakewood Elementary, where the library in Port Dover now is the public library for the school.
Okay.
So all of our collection is totally shared with that school, and it's treated like their library, but it's also a public library. We do not have that agreement with any other schools currently.
I guess it'd be nice if we could. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Through you to Ms. King. I noticed in the library reserve fund you're getting close to a $3 million deficit. I was wondering when and if you had any plans to address that shortfall.
We have been discussing it at our library board meetings, and it is in our strategic plan to start working on a replacement program
A replacement program?
to start raising more funds so that we can actually replace some of the reserves that have been depleted.
And when do you think you'll have some progress on that?
Well, it's on our operational plan for this year to start looking at methods to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. And one last question: how did you come to for the new position? How did you come to the amount $82,000?
It's based on an entry-level position of a library technician, and then the benefits are added on top of that.
That's an entry-level position.
Right.
Ouch. Thank you.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heather, I noticed that you've got under minor capital here, weeping tile installation at Port Rowan. And I was by there on Sunday, and I noticed that the roof is in real bad shape at the Port Rowan Library. And is it in the budget somewhere?
I believe it's in the capital budget in another year. So that would fall under the facilities operation of the county, not the library board.
So that comes under the county then?
Yes.
Okay, hopefully the books won't get wet. Thanks.
Any other questions for Ms. King? Okay. Well, go ahead, Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I had caught this one as well, but forgot to ask Heather before. Heather, I'm looking again at this sheet here and the contracted services, and you've identified a $38,000 cost regarding your janitorial services contract. Is that an increase in the cost of the contract proposed for this year of $38,000?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
The janitorial contract had been tendered out, I believe, a year ago, and the successful bidder was not performing adequately, and it was re-tendered for the entire county. And so this is our new price. It's an
Wow.
increase of $38,000.
It is an increase of 38 for cleaning our 5 branches.
Yes.
That's pretty significant, obviously, and
It is.
obviously nothing you have any control over, but,
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Could I have a motion to receive the deputation, please? Councillor Wells, discussion. Those in favor of receiving the deputation, that is carried. Heather, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
time this morning. We will now go to our final deputation this morning from Nancy Scher, and Nancy is here to speak to us on behalf of the Dunnville Dental Group, and this is the discretionary dental benefit funding. Again, Nancy, as you know, we allow 10 minutes, so I'll turn things over to you. And if you want to pull that microphone up so we can hear every word, very good. Thank you
Very
and
tall,
welcome.
I apologize. Okay, I'm a little nervous, so please excuse
Oh,
me.
you have nothing to be nervous about.
Oh, well, we'll see. So good morning. My name is Nancy Scher, and I have been given the honor of speaking on behalf of the Bridges Dunnville Dental Group and the dedicated community members who support our initiative. I would like to thank Mayor Luke and Council for allowing me this time, as well as I'd also like to thank everyone who came out today to lend their support. In September 2015, a small group of citizens collaborated with organizations to bring the Bridges Out of Poverty workshop to the broader Dunnville community. Approximately 250 attendees from the diverse backgrounds completed the workshop, which served as a catalyst to residents. A group of volunteers explored possible next steps and partnered with the Haldeman War Memorial Hospital to pilot Getting Ahead. This is an 8-week voluntary co-investigating workshop for people impacted by the most by poverty. This co-learning environment provided a safe space to assess social problems, community needs, and innovative solutions. In June 2016, the first Getting Ahead group graduated, and many individuals shared their personal experiences when living in poverty. What struck a chord were their stories of how the lack of dental care impacted